They bullied the wrong black kid. He turned the school upside down. It happened so fast no one could believe what they'd just seen. 1 second, Josh McNeil, captain of the basketball team and self-proclaimed king of Oak Ridge High, was standing over the new kid with a sneer. The next, he was flat on the floor, gasping for air, while the cafeteria stood frozen in complete disbelief. All eyes were on the new student, Isaiah Cole. He hadn't said a word, hadn't made a scene, hadn't even raised his voice. But in one swift, clean motion, he'd turned the school's most feared bully into a gasping mess on the tile floor. And the craziest part, Isaiah didn't look surprised. He just quietly picked up his tray, nodded once at the stunned students watching him, and walked away. 24 hours earlier, no one even knew his name. Oak Ridge was a town that liked sameness: white picket fences, Friday night football, and people who looked and thought just like each other. So when Isaiah showed up on the first day of senior year, black, quiet, dressed in simple jeans and a gray hoodie, he didn't just stand out. He disrupted something they didn't want to admit existed. No one said it out loud, but everyone saw the way teachers paused when calling roll, the way students shifted in their seats when Isaiah walked in, the way he didn't even flinch when he caught them staring. He sat in the back, took out a notebook, and went about his day like he wasn't surrounded by eyes waiting for him to mess up. Josh noticed him immediately. Oak Ridge was his kingdom, his rules, his jokes, his spotlight. And Isaiah? Isaiah didn't play by any of it. Didn't laugh when Josh made a joke in English class. Didn't move when Josh accidentally kicked his backpack in the hallway. Didn't even blink when Josh knocked Isaiah's water bottle to the ground. That silence, that calm, it was the ultimate insult. Josh wasn't used to not being the center of someone's world, especially someone new, especially someone who, by Oak Ridge standards, didn't belong. And that made Isaiah a threat. "Think you're too good to talk to people?" Josh had asked that morning, smirking as he and his crew, Travis, Dylan, and Cooper, blocked Isaiah's locker. Isaiah looked up slowly, eyes steady. "No, I just don't talk to people who think silence is weakness." It wasn't the words themselves. It was how he said them, steady, level, like Josh was nothing more than background noise. Dylan had to choke back a laugh. Cooper raised his eyebrows, but Josh... His face turned red. Lunchtime was where it happened. Isaiah was sitting at a table in the far corner, alone, reading. Tray untouched. The cafeteria was buzzing, but he seemed like he was somewhere else entirely, like none of it mattered. And that infuriated Josh more than anything. He stormed over, slapped Isaiah's book closed. "You think you're better than me?" Isaiah looked at him, his expression unreadable. "No, I just think you're loud." The room fell quiet. "You little punk," Josh muttered and reached for Isaiah's shirt. And that's when everything snapped. Isaiah moved like water, fluid, fast, efficient. He didn't punch. He didn't shout. He just ducked under Josh's arm, twisted it behind his back, and dropped him to the floor with a clean, practiced motion. The kind that doesn't come from anger, but from training. Real training. The kind that leaves you wondering what else he's capable of. Josh groaned on the ground. Isaiah stood over him, breathing steady. "You should pick on someone less patient," he said calmly, then stepped over him and walked out of the cafeteria like nothing had happened. And just like that, everything changed. Whispers flew through the school like wildfire. "Did you see that? Who is he? That wasn't normal. Did you see how fast he moved? That guy has training. Real training." By the time final period ended, Isaiah was the name on every lip. But he didn't care. He wasn't here to prove anything. He wasn't here for attention, and he definitely wasn't here to make friends. Mrs. Belle, the chemistry teacher, saw it all unfold. She watched Isaiah walk into her class that afternoon like nothing had happened. She saw the look in his eyes, tired, calculating, restrained. And for the first time in her 15 years teaching at Oak Ridge, she realized something that unsettled her deeply. This wasn't a typical teenage boy. This was someone who knew how to control himself. Someone who'd been taught not just how to defend, but how to wait, how to observe, how to survive. And that scared her more than the fight itself. Because in towns like Oak Ridge, boys like Josh run the show. But boys like Isaiah, they change everything. The fallout from the cafeteria incident didn't take long. By second period the next morning, Isaiah Cole wasn't just the new kid anymore. He was the kid who took down Josh McNeil. Everyone had seen it. Everyone had talked about it. And now, everyone had an opinion. Some called it self-defense. Others whispered that Isaiah was dangerous. And a few, especially those who had lived under Josh's shadow for years, started to see Isaiah as something else entirely. A symbol that maybe, finally, the king had been dethroned. But not Josh. Josh wasn't used to losing. And more than that, he wasn't used to being laughed at. It ate at him like acid. Every glance felt like a smirk. Every whisper felt like a joke. Even his own friends had started to treat him differently. "You good, man?" Dylan asked that morning in the locker room, eyes flicking toward the bruise still faintly visible on Josh's chin. Josh slammed his locker shut. He got lucky. Cooper, always the more cautious one, leaned against the wall. "That didn't look like luck." Josh glared at him. "It looked like I was caught off guard." That's it. But deep down, Josh knew that wasn't it. Isaiah hadn't moved like someone who'd gotten lucky. He moved like someone who had done it before. Someone who knew exactly what he was doing. And that made it worse. He didn't want a rematch. Not yet. Not with Isaiah playing it so cool, like none of this mattered. He needed a new plan. Something that would break him slowly, quietly, publicly. And he knew exactly where to start. That day in the cafeteria, Isaiah sat in the same corner, alone again. But this time, no longer invisible. A group of juniors passed by his table, pretending to laugh about something else, but glancing at him, clearly hoping to catch a reaction. He gave them none. A sophomore dropped her tray near him and gasped, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," before scurrying away like she'd just dropped a bomb. Again, Isaiah didn't flinch. Even teachers were watching now. Mrs. Bell paused before handing out her lab instructions in chemistry, her eyes lingering on Isaiah a little too long. "You all right with working alone today, mister?" "Cole, I usually do," he replied calmly. By lunch, Josh had already begun phase 1. Rumors. "I heard Isaiah's been in juvie," one student whispered to another. "Nah, my cousin said he used to be in some kind of underground fight club," another added. "Someone said his dad's ex-military." Like Navy SEAL level. The stories changed with each retelling, but they all led to the same place. Fear. Josh had spread them with care, planting seeds, never appearing to be the source. He didn't want Isaiah angry. Not yet. He wanted Isaiah isolated, mistrusted. Watched like a ticking time bomb, and it worked. By the end of the week, Isaiah's silence was no longer seen as calm. It was seen as ominous. But there was one person who wasn't buying it. Mr. Carter. The history teacher was in his 50s, black, sharp as a razor, and respected across the school. He had seen generations of Oak Ridge students come and go, and he had seen this kind of behavior before. He called Isaiah into his classroom after school on Friday. Isaiah walked in, cautious but composed. "You wanted to see me?" "Close the door, son." Isaiah did. Mr. Carter gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I've been watching you," he said. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to scare me?" Mr. Carter smiled faintly. "No, but I figured someone should tell you the truth, since most people around here are afraid to." Isaiah leaned back. "Go ahead." "I know what you did in the cafeteria. And I know it wasn't out of anger." Isaiah didn't respond. He just waited. That calm, that control, that doesn't come from YouTube videos. You've been trained. Isaiah's face stayed neutral. "Maybe I've had to learn." Mr. Carter studied him for a long moment. "And maybe you've learned that staying quiet is the best way to survive. But here's the thing, Isaiah. This town, this school, it doesn't reward silence. It punishes it." Isaiah's jaw tightened slightly. "You think if you don't react, they'll get bored." "They won't," Mr. Carter continued. "They'll poke harder. Push more, until they get what they want." Isaiah met his gaze. "And what do they want?" "To break you, mister." Carter said plainly, "Because if you don't follow their rules, they can't control you, and that terrifies them." Silence stretched between them. Mr. Carter leaned forward. "You've got a choice to make. You can keep playing defense, or you can take control of the game." Isaiah stood up slowly. "I'm not here to play games." "Neither was I, once, Mr. Carter said, his voice low, almost bitter. "And I lost years trying to be smaller, quieter. Don't make the same mistake." Isaiah didn't respond. But when he left the classroom, something in his walk had changed. He was still calm, still quiet. But something underneath was shifting, and the people around him could sense it. That weekend, Josh hosted a party. His house. Big turnout, music, drinks, laughter, everything he needed to remind everyone who he still was. Until someone brought up Isaiah. "Dude, I still can't believe he flipped you like that." Josh forced a laugh. "Yeah, funny. Let me show you something." He walked into the living room, plugged his phone into the speaker system, and played a video. It was security footage from the cafeteria. Someone had pulled it off the school servers. Somehow, the fight, the flip. Isaiah walking away. Everyone went silent. "See?" Josh said, laughing nervously. "He sucker punched me." But no one laughed with him, because in the video, it was clear. Isaiah didn't sucker punch anyone. He reacted calmly, precisely, and Josh. He was the one who looked like a fool. And then, someone new spoke up. A voice Josh didn't recognize. "Man, maybe you messed with the wrong guy." The room fell quiet again. Josh turned toward the voice. It was a freshman. A kid Josh didn't know, but the words hit like a slap, and that's when Josh knew. The crown was slipping. And Isaiah Cole hadn't even touched it. Monday morning brought a strange energy to Oak Ridge High. Whispers buzzed in the halls like static. Something had shifted, and no one knew exactly where it was headed. Isaiah Cole walked through the school's front doors the same way he always did. Alone, silent, eyes forward. But this time, the stares he received were different. Less mocking, more cautious. Even the ones who once smirked when he passed now looked away first. But he didn't care about the stares. He was focused. What Josh didn't realize, what nobody realized, was that Isaiah never wanted this fight. He hadn't come to Oak Ridge to prove anything. He came because his mom transferred her job and said, "We need a fresh start." That was all. But what Isaiah knew, and what Josh McNeil still hadn't learned, was that sometimes people don't push back because they're afraid. Sometimes they're just giving you time to realize your mistake. And if you don't, well, eventually, you find out the hard way. The first blow came unexpectedly, figuratively at least. Mr. Carter, the history teacher, posted a list outside his door before first period. Student Council essay finalists. It wasn't just a random thing. The essay contest was a tradition. The winner gave a speech at graduation. It was the kind of recognition that went on college applications, that parents bragged about. And Isaiah's name was first on the list. Josh's was nowhere on it. Cooper stared at the paper, dumbfounded. Wait, this guy? Who even is he? Josh read the name 3 times, jaw tight. He probably copied it off someone. Carter wouldn't let that happen, Cooper muttered. Josh didn't respond, but the frustration in his chest was building like pressure under glass. This wasn't supposed to happen. Isaiah wasn't just making him look weak in front of the students. He was starting to take space. Real space. Academic. Social. Even teachers were starting to notice him for more than just the cafeteria incident. But Isaiah wasn't trying to be known. That's what made it worse. That afternoon, during third period physics, Mrs. Alvarez passed out a pop quiz. Groans echoed through the classroom, but Isaiah barely blinked. He finished in 10 minutes, placed it face down, and sat quietly. When the results came back the next day, only one student had scored a perfect grade. Isaiah. The girl sitting next to him, Julia Reynolds, leaned over and whispered, "How are you not in AP Physics?" "I didn't ask to be," Isaiah said simply. She blinked. "You should." Meanwhile, Josh sat 2 rows behind, watching this quiet exchange with a scowl. He had flunked the quiz. Again. And he was starting to realize something far more dangerous than Isaiah being physically capable. He was smart. The kind of smart that people respected. The kind of smart that didn't need fists to win. That was the real threat. So Josh adjusted his game. He started spreading rumors again, but this time, not about violence. Not about gangs or fights. He attacked character. Isaiah's only getting special treatment because the school's trying to look woke. His mom works for some nonprofit. Probably threatened the school board. I heard Mr. Carter's giving him answers. Isaiah caught wind of it by Thursday. He didn't flinch. Didn't respond, but the whispers got louder, more insidious, until one finally made it into the wrong ear. Mrs. Alvarez pulled Isaiah aside after class. "Isaiah, can I ask you something?" He looked at her calmly. "Sure. Some students have raised concerns about your quiz results. You think I cheated?" Her eyes softened, almost embarrassed. "I didn't say that. But if there's any doubt, I'd like you to take a new test. Supervised." He nodded without hesitation. "When?" "Now, if that's all right." Isaiah followed her to an empty classroom. She sat behind him silent. He was given a fresh copy. No calculator. No notes. Just him, the paper, and a pencil. 20 minutes later, he handed it back. She graded it on the spot. Another perfect score. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the paper. Then looked up, clearly ashamed. "I'm sorry," she said. "You don't need to be," Isaiah replied. "You're not the one spreading the lies." She opened her mouth to respond, but he was already walking out. That night, Josh got a text from Cooper. "You heard." Alvarez tested him. He aced it again. Clean. Josh stared at the screen, then slammed his phone on the table. Nothing was working, not the rumors, not the intimidation. Not even the silence. And in a desperate move, Josh decided it was time to turn the school against Isaiah in a way no one could ignore. He created a fake anonymous account and posted a screenshot of Isaiah's essay, ripped straight from the school server using his dad's admin login. Then he captioned it. Funny how the new kid's essay matches a speech from Columbia University in 2019. It was fake, but it looked real, and by morning, it had spread like wildfire. Isaiah walked into school to find his name whispered everywhere again, but this time, not with awe, with suspicion, plagiarism. By third period, he was called into the principal's office. He sat in front of a long wooden desk. Principal McCarthy, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, held the paper like it was a verdict. "We received a concerning report about your essay," he said. Isaiah said nothing. It's been suggested that it closely resembles a published address given by a Columbia graduate. Isaiah remained calm. "Did anyone check the dates?" McCarthy frowned. "What do you mean?" "I wrote mine 3 years ago, for a state writing competition in Atlanta. It won first place. You can verify it." There was a pause, then a knock at the door. It was Mr. Carter, holding a printed PDF from a Georgia Youth Writing Conference, dated March 2021. "This his?" McCarthy asked. "Mr." Carter nodded. "Word for word. Isaiah's been writing like this for years." McCarthy looked stunned. "Then who?" "I don't know," Carter said quietly, but someone wanted to make sure the school stopped looking at him as a student and started seeing him as a threat. Isaiah stood up. "Now do you believe me?" The principal sighed deeply. "I do." But it was too late. The seed had been planted, and even if the lie had been disproven, the damage was done. Isaiah stepped out of that office not angry, but sharper. He realized now that he wasn't just dealing with schoolyard bullying. He was dealing with something much bigger. And this time, he wasn't going to just walk away. The fallout from the plagiarism accusation didn't disappear overnight. Even after the principal cleared Isaiah publicly, the whispers continued. Students acted like nothing had happened, but the shift in energy was clear. There was tension now, not just the usual undercurrent of high school drama, but something deeper. Isaiah wasn't just a target anymore. He was a disruption. At Oak Ridge High, control mattered more than truth, and Isaiah Cole had upset the balance. Josh McNeil knew it, and he hated it. On Friday, a new rumor surfaced. One even more dangerous. "Isaiah's not just some smart kid. I heard he's got connections. His mom works in government or something. He's probably spying on us." The story spread like wildfire. Dumb. Paranoid, but it worked. Students started keeping their distance. Isaiah's presence made people nervous now, not because he was aggressive, but because they didn't know how far his reach really was. Even teachers hesitated around him. Isaiah noticed. He always noticed. He didn't try to fight the stories anymore. He'd realized something after the incident in the principal's office. People didn't want truth. They wanted comfort, familiarity, and Isaiah made them uncomfortable. That weekend he sat alone in the library, headphones on, researching. Not schoolwork, strategy. He started mapping out who had power at Oak Ridge, who the teachers listened to, which parents were donors. What social clubs held real weight. He wasn't just going to react anymore. He was going to play offense. Meanwhile, Josh wasn't done. He had one last card to play, something that would crush Isaiah publicly on the football field. Oak Ridge had a huge annual tradition, the Junior-Senior Games, a week of competitions across sports and academics. It ended with the Friday night showcase, a live school-wide event. Students competed in everything from relays to academic trivia. Local sponsors came out. The school board showed up. This year, Josh was captain of the junior team. He had already rigged the team selection. ensuring Isaiah got thrown into an event he'd never trained for, the obstacle course. The school's most physically brutal challenge. "Let's see how long your perfect record holds up when it's your face in the dirt," Josh said to Cooper, grinning. Cooper hesitated. "Are you sure he won't just dominate that too?" Josh laughed bitterly. "He's not superhuman. He doesn't know the layout. We'll get him to crack." Monday morning, the gym rosters were posted. Isaiah's name was there, right next to obstacle course, Friday, 7:30 p.m. He stared at the sheet for a long moment. Behind him, Josh's voice cut through the hallway noise. "Hope you've been working on your grip strength, Cole." Isaiah turned slowly. He looked at Josh for the first time in weeks. Really looked at him. And then, without blinking, said, "Hope you've been working on your apologies." Josh's smirk faltered for a second. Then he forced a chuckle and walked off. Isaiah didn't blink. That week, Isaiah trained. Quietly, precisely. He didn't ask for help. Didn't ask questions, but he studied the course, studied the layout. Took mental notes from YouTube videos of past events. At night, he ran drills, practiced bodyweight exercises. Built muscle memory. He didn't care about the trophy. He cared about something more dangerous, exposing weakness. Friday came. The gym bleachers were packed. Parents, students, faculty. Even Principal McCarthy and Superintendent Douglas sat in the front row. The lights were harsh, the music loud. Isaiah stood at the starting line in plain black sweats. No Oak Ridge jersey, no school pride, just him. Josh stood a few feet away in full team colors. He wore gloves, chalked his hands. Stretched dramatically, played to the crowd. The buzzer blared. And the course began. The first hurdle was rope climbing. Josh flew up fast, 2 steps at a time. Isaiah followed, not as flashy, but smooth, methodical. Next came the monkey bars. Then the crawl-through tire trench, the balance beams. Josh was ahead. But Isaiah never slowed. It was at the final station, a wall jump, that everything shifted. Josh ran up first, tried to leap, but his footing slipped on the chalked ramp. He stumbled, tried again, missed the edge. The crowd gasped. Isaiah didn't pause. He ran, used the momentum of the ramp, and scaled the wall in one clean move. No dramatic flail, no wasted energy, just timing. He landed on the other side. The buzzer rang again. The gym exploded. Students rose to their feet, cheering. Faculty looked stunned. Josh hadn't even finished the course yet. And Isaiah had won. No one said it aloud, but they all saw it. He hadn't just outperformed Josh. He had dismantled the illusion. Later that night, while the crowd filed out and the school janitors started sweeping confetti from the bleachers, Principal McCarthy approached Isaiah in the hallway. "You didn't just win that race," he said quietly. "You changed the room." Isaiah looked up, meeting his gaze. "No," he replied calmly. "They just saw what was always there." Outside, Josh sat alone in the locker room, his hands clenched into fists, staring at his reflection in a cracked mirror. He wasn't just embarrassed anymore, he was angry, and next time, he wouldn't rely on public humiliation. He would go darker, dirtier, and Isaiah wouldn't see it coming. It wasn't just the win, it was the silence afterward, a kind of hush that fell over Oak Ridge High, like someone had finally cracked the walls of an old building and let fresh air in. Isaiah didn't celebrate. He didn't need to. The look on Josh's face when he fell short in front of the entire school was enough. But power doesn't disappear. It recoils. Josh wasn't done. The next week, the air around school changed again. Less open hostility, more tension in every hallway. Isaiah could feel it, eyes watching him longer, whispers trailing behind. People weren't sure if they respected him or feared him. Some did both. The teachers avoided confrontation. No one wanted to get caught in the crossfire. Principal McCarthy was cordial, even supportive, but distant, like he didn't know whether to treat Isaiah as a student or a story waiting to explode. Isaiah didn't mind. He had bigger things to focus on, but Josh wasn't letting go. He was humiliated. Stripped of his status in one public moment, and he wanted it back. The problem was, he couldn't beat Isaiah in public again. That ship had sailed, so he shifted tactics. If he couldn't beat Isaiah with force, he'd try to destroy his foundation. It started small. Rumors about Isaiah cheating on exams, carefully planted, never loud enough to be traced. Then a locker search by school security, routine, but poorly timed the morning before finals. They found nothing, of course, but it was enough to spark another round of suspicion. Isaiah handled it the same way he always did, with silence. Until one afternoon, something crossed the line. Isaiah arrived at his locker to find his journal missing. It wasn't just a notebook. It held private reflections, strategy sketches, thoughts on the system around him. Nothing illegal, just raw, honest. And now it was gone. He searched the hallway, the gym, the library, nothing. That night, someone uploaded blurry photos to a student-run gossip account, pages from Isaiah's journal, taken out of context. Quotes about power, manipulation, silence as a weapon. By morning, the comments had flooded in. Creepy. Dude's plotting something. Is he gonna snap? Isaiah stared at his phone. His stomach turned, not with fear, but with clarity. They weren't afraid because he was dangerous. They were afraid because he was smarter than they were used to. And that made them uncomfortable. At lunch, he sat alone again. This time, it wasn't by choice. Students looked at him like he was radioactive. Josh passed by his table, slow, deliberate, voice low. Everyone's watching now. You're not a mystery anymore, Cole. You're just another freak who thinks he's better than everyone. Isaiah didn't answer. He simply stood up. Walked straight past Josh, down the hall, into the administrative office. Is Principal McCarthy in? He asked. The secretary nodded, confused. Do you have an appointment? No. But he'll want to hear this. Inside the office, McCarthy looked up from his desk. Isaiah. I'm not here to complain, Isaiah said, calm but firm. I'm here to make something clear. McCarthy folded his hands. Go on. Isaiah sat, voice low but intense. I've tried to stay quiet. I've played by the rules. Even when the system bent them against me. But someone broke into my locker. They stole my personal journal. And now it's being used to target me. McCarthy's face stiffened. I don't need protection, Isaiah continued. But I need you to understand. If the school doesn't do something about this, I will. McCarthy blinked. Are you threatening me? No, Isaiah said. I'm informing you. The principal leaned back. Do you have any proof who took it? Isaiah didn't flinch. I don't need to. You already know who would. McCarthy didn't respond. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. Isaiah stood to leave, but just before he reached the door, McCarthy spoke. Isaiah, you're not wrong, but there's a process. Things take time. Isaiah turned his head slightly. Time is exactly what they're using against me. And then he left. That night, Isaiah changed his strategy. No more reacting. It was time to disrupt. He logged onto a private server, one he'd built months ago, and began uploading files. Screenshots. Video clips, audio recordings. He'd been documenting everything. Not just bullying, but school policies, teacher misconduct, favoritism in sports programs, even data showing racially skewed suspensions. He didn't plan to release it all. Not yet. But if they pushed him further, he'd make sure Oak Ridge High became national news, and people like Josh McNeil would finally be seen for who they really were. Because Isaiah hadn't just come to survive. He'd come to rebuild the rules from the inside out, and the foundation. It was already cracking. The morning after Isaiah uploaded his files, Oak Ridge High felt different, subtly at first. Teachers were quieter, coaches unusually stiff. Even Principal McCarthy walked through the halls like he was treading on eggshells. Isaiah didn't say a word. He didn't need to. He knew what was coming. At lunch, whispers swirled like a storm cloud gathering over the cafeteria. Someone had anonymously posted a file labeled Oak Ridge Truth Dump on a local student forum. It wasn't just gossip, it was evidence. Video clips of teachers ignoring racial slurs, audio of Coach Branford threatening to bench a kid for not falling in line, charts showing that black students were 3 times more likely to be suspended than white ones. The whole school was looking at their world through different eyes. Even the students who used to mock Isaiah now avoided eye contact. Some were embarrassed, others just afraid. And Josh McNeil? He was furious. When Isaiah passed by his table, Josh stood abruptly, slamming his tray onto the floor. "You think hiding behind a screen makes you powerful?" Isaiah didn't flinch. He stopped, turned slowly. His voice was low and measured. "You've had power your whole life, Josh. Look where it got you." Josh's nostrils flared. He stepped forward. "You think you're better than me?" "No," Isaiah said. "I just stopped pretending you were better than me." The cafeteria froze. Josh stood there, fists clenched, red-faced, but he didn't move, because now every eye was on him. Not as the king of Oak Ridge, but as the liar exposed. And he knew it. Isaiah turned and walked away, calm as ever. But in the shadows, another battle was brewing. That afternoon, Isaiah was called to the principal's office. He stepped inside, shut the door behind him. McCarthy stood by the window, tense. "You leaked confidential data," McCarthy said without turning. "I exposed patterns," Isaiah corrected. "You accessed restricted systems. That's a serious violation." Isaiah stepped forward, voice steady. "You knew about those patterns. You ignored them." McCarthy turned. "That's not how change works." "No," Isaiah said. "That's how cover-ups work." There was a pause. McCarthy exhaled slowly, then pulled a folder from his desk. He slid it across. "I got a call from the district superintendent this morning. They've opened an independent investigation." Isaiah's jaw tightened. "They're not happy, Isaiah. Neither are some of the donors backing our athletics department." "People want someone to blame." "Of course they do," Isaiah said, "but blaming me won't fix your culture." McCarthy's gaze darkened. "I'm not trying to fix the culture. I'm trying to stop this school from burning down." "Maybe it needs to," Isaiah said, eyes locked on his, "so something better can grow." McCarthy stared at him a long moment. "You're suspended." 3 days, effective immediately." Isaiah didn't look surprised. He simply picked up the folder and nodded once. "Noted." On his way out of the office, he passed Mrs. Jacobs, one of the oldest teachers at Oak Ridge. She had always smiled at him before, but today she only glanced away. By the time he reached the front gate, his phone was buzzing non-stop. Texts, emails, Anonymous messages, some were support. Some were threats. One message stood out, from an unknown number. "They're planning something bigger. Don't come back alone." He stared at the screen. Then he looked up, just in time to see Josh, Ryan, and two older boys from the varsity team watching him from across the street. They weren't laughing. They weren't talking. They were waiting. Isaiah knew that look. And for the first time since he arrived at Oak Ridge, he felt something he hadn't felt before. Not fear. Purpose. He turned the screen off. He didn't need warnings anymore. He knew exactly what was coming, and he was ready for all of it. The sun dipped low as Isaiah Carter stood across from the empty gym building, his hoodie pulled over his head, not out of fear, but to blend in. He knew what this night was about. It wasn't just retaliation. It was desperation. A final act from a system collapsing in on itself. Josh McNeil had made his move. The rumor had spread all afternoon. Isaiah was coming back to school, and certain people weren't going to let it slide. Isaiah had heard whispers of a planned message, something that would put him back in his place. But what they didn't know was, he had a plan too. Isaiah moved quietly through the side door of the gym, unlocked like he expected. Oak Ridge never really worried about security. Why would they? They never thought someone like Isaiah could hold real power. He stepped into the dimly lit hallway that led to the locker rooms. Every footstep echoed. Then came the voice. "You finally decided to stop hiding." Josh's silhouette appeared from behind the weight benches, flanked by Ryan Carter and two other seniors, Eli Benson, linebacker, and Derek Chan, wrestling team captain. They stood in a loose semicircle, trying to trap him. Isaiah's voice was calm. "You know what's crazy, Josh? I was never hiding. You just weren't ready to see me." Josh sneered. "You think because you embarrassed me, got people talking, that makes you powerful? You're nothing but a hacker with a chip on your shoulder." Isaiah stepped forward, unafraid. "I didn't hack anything. I used the truth, something you've run from your whole life." Ryan laughed low. "You really think you're changing anything? This school, this town, it'll never be yours." "That's where you're wrong," Isaiah said. "It was never about owning it. It was about exposing it." Josh's smirk faded. Suddenly, Derek lunged. But Isaiah was ready. He sidestepped, grabbed Derek's arm, twisted him off balance, and sent him crashing into the benches with a loud thud. Eli charged next, barreling forward like a train. Isaiah ducked low, swept his leg under him, and the linebacker collapsed to the ground with a heavy groan. Ryan hesitated. That pause was all Isaiah needed. He grabbed a small pocket-sized taser from his waistband, a legal one, registered, something his mother had insisted he carry since they moved. He didn't use it, just showed it. Ryan froze. "I didn't come here to fight," Isaiah said, voice sharp. "But I won't run." Josh was the last one standing now, breathing heavy, jaw clenched. He looked around, at the bodies of his teammates groaning, at Isaiah who hadn't broken a sweat. "This isn't over," he said through gritted teeth. Isaiah stepped closer, quiet and controlled. "Yeah, it is, because the cameras I installed in this gym caught every second of this." Josh's eyes widened. "You're bluffing." Isaiah pulled out his phone. One tap, and the screen played back the exact footage, silent, clear, time-stamped. Josh watched himself sneer, watched his boys attack first. His chest rose and fell faster now. "You assaulted me," Isaiah said, "on school property, in a space with no adults, during my suspension. You're looking at expulsion, maybe charges, and I'm not even going to press play publicly, unless you give me a reason." Josh was speechless. for once, utterly powerless. The twist was never in the strength. It was the setup. Isaiah had known this moment was coming. He had planned every piece. Let the rumor spread. Let them bait him. And now, standing in the middle of their trap, he'd flipped the game completely. Isaiah turned, walking away. But just before he pushed the door open, he looked over his shoulder. Next time you pick a fight, make sure the person you're going after isn't already 10 steps ahead. As he walked into the night air, he didn't smile. He didn't gloat. Because this was never about revenge. It was about taking back the narrative. And now the final chapter was his to write. It started with silence. The next morning, Oak Ridge High felt like a different world. No Josh McNeil pacing the hallways. No Ryan Carter tossing snide remarks near the lockers. No tense stares when Isaiah passed through the cafeteria. Just silence. By third period, the rumor had solidified into fact. Josh, Ryan, Derek, and Eli had been suspended indefinitely. There was even talk of expulsion hearings. Word had gotten out. Someone had submitted a full report to the school board, complete with time-stamped video footage, student statements, and digital evidence of harassment. No one knew exactly who turned it in, but everyone had a pretty good idea. Isaiah Carter had turned the school upside down. But what most students didn't know, what even some teachers couldn't figure out, was how a quiet black kid from the East Side had managed to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the most powerful group on campus without ever throwing a single illegal punch. Mr. Bennett, the civics teacher, and one of the few faculty who had always watched Isaiah closely, paused him outside his classroom that afternoon. "I read the board meeting summary," he said, voice low. "I'm guessing you had something to do with that outcome." Isaiah shrugged. Just made sure the truth had a voice. Mr. Bennett smiled, nodding. "You did more than that, Isaiah. You gave a lot of students something they didn't know they needed, hope. But not everyone was hopeful. That afternoon, as Isaiah sat under the big tree behind the school, his usual spot for decompressing, he noticed a shadow approach. It was Josh. His eyes weren't defiant anymore. There was no swagger in his step. Just a heavy, quiet walk. Isaiah didn't stand. He didn't need to. Josh sat down across from him, not looking directly at him at first. He fiddled with his sleeve, breathed in deep, then finally spoke. "I was wrong," he said. Isaiah didn't blink. "I thought, if I controlled everything, no one could touch me. But you didn't fight me with fists. You let me fight myself, and I lost." Isaiah finally looked him in the eyes. "It was never about beating you, Josh. It was about stopping you." Josh nodded slowly. "Yeah, and you did." There was no apology beyond that. No dramatic breakdown, but Isaiah didn't need one. That sentence held more truth than any forced sorry ever could. The following week, Oak Ridge High voted to establish a new student-led disciplinary council, a proposal that had sat ignored in the student government folder for 2 years. Isaiah was invited to join. He declined. He wasn't looking for a seat at the table. He had already built his own. But something did change. Students started speaking up more. A freshman who'd been quietly dealing with harassment in the robotics lab came forward. A Latina junior finally reported the jokes she'd been enduring for months. And teachers began listening differently, asking instead of assuming. It wasn't a perfect transformation. Some things took longer to shift. But a crack had been made. And from that crack, something real began to grow. The final Friday before spring break, Isaiah found himself surrounded by a circle of students. Some he'd never spoken to before, others who had once kept their distance. Someone had started calling the spot under the tree Isaiah's corner. He didn't love the name, but he smiled at it anyway. "You know," said Julia, a junior who once avoided him in the cafeteria. "This school actually feels different now. Like, I don't wake up dreading it." Isaiah glanced toward the gym where everything had started. "One person can't fix a place like Oak Ridge," he said. "But if you shake it hard enough, it might start fixing itself." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Julia asked, "What made you keep going?" "You could have just walked away." Isaiah looked at her, his eyes calm but firm. "Because too many people walk away, and I'm tired of seeing silence win." That night, Isaiah uploaded one last video to the school forum. His face appeared on screen. No hoodie, no hiding. "If you're watching this, you probably know what happened," he said. "You've heard the stories. But this isn't about me. It's about what happens when you stand up, not for revenge, not for ego, but for what's right. Because truth doesn't shout. It waits, and when it finally speaks, it doesn't need to raise its voice to shake a system." He paused, then added, "To anyone who's ever been pushed down, cornered, or silenced, your voice matters. You don't need power to make change. You just need courage." The video ended with a single sentence, typed in bold across a black screen. "They bullied the wrong kid." Now, the whole school knows why. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Share your thoughts. And if you believe in stories that challenge injustice, flip the script and give power back to those who deserve it. Subscribe, because this is only the beginning.